Howdy. How's all my friends out there in YouTube land today? I hope this finds you well. Weather is not doing too terrible bad here today, but it is a little breezy, and we've had a little bit of rain, and I am not doing very well. I think I told you yesterday that my knee was trying to blow out, and well, it accomplished its goal last night. So ACL is torn in my knee, and I'm limping around with the cane, and it looks like I'm doing auditions for Monty Python's School of Funny Walks today. So I've got a few days of healing here to try to get my knee straightened back up so that I can get around. It's throwing me behind schedule on all the things that I wanted to do, and well, I've got gardening to do this weekend, and I don't know how that's going to work out for me. So I'm doing the best I can, but I wanted to sit here and do a little crafting today, and we're going to do another one of these 5x7 canvases with a design on it, a quilt pattern design, and this one is called the maple leaf. And again, we go to our trusty straight edge to put our design in. Now, I'll explain to you how I did this. I looked at my pattern. I saw that my pattern was going to be 4 inches by 4 inches for my canvas. I know that my canvas is 5x7. So what I did is I started out figuring, okay, 4 inches from 5 inches, 5 inches across my canvas. Well, that leaves an inch. So it'd be a ½ an inch on each side that I need to mark off for a border. Go in this direction. So I marked off a ½ an inch on each side. Then I knew that 4 inches from 7 inches, my canvas runs 7 inches this direction, would be 3 inches. Divide 3 inches by 2 is 1.5 inches. So I came in 1.5 inches on each side, and I made my lines across that way. That left me my 4x4 square here in the middle, which I marked off in a grid. Marked off 1 inch segments going one way and 1 inch segments going the other way. Once I got that all marked in, I looked at my pattern. I did it a little differently than I did yesterday because I didn't want to make mistakes like that again. So I looked at my design to see which direction I needed to make my diagonals in each square. Some of the squares didn't take any diagonals at all, like my corner squares. Then I had some squares in the middle that didn't need any diagonals in them. And I had a square here that didn't need a diagonal. So I put the diagonals go in the direction that they needed to go in each of those. Then I took another look at my pattern to see what colors I needed to put where. And I've got 3 main colors in this design. And so I named them X, Y, and Z. And I made X's in the X squares or triangles. And I made Z's in the other triangles around. And then I had 3 squares here in the middle that are Y's. So I put my 3 Y's right there. Now, since it is a maple leaf, it's going to have a stem. So I took my compass and I laid my compass out. I played around with it a little bit on exactly where did I want to put my compass on here to make my stem. And I decided that I liked it right there on that line. And then I just marked it accordingly for the sizes that I wanted to spin out there to make my, or was it here? I think it was here that I put it. And I marked it, making my designs. I just moved it out like 1/4 inch for the second line to make the stem on the maple leaf. And now we got to paint it. So we'll paint the design here in the center, and then I've got a border going around the edge of it that I've got some colors here that I'll use. And so I'm going to start in with a brown. I've got this brown color, and this is all apple barrel paint. This one is called nutmeg brown. And again, I'm going to use my micro brushes that I've shown you on the last episode and used them on a myriad of projects that I have painted here on my show. And we just take the little micro brush and we dip it in the paint. Now, these are going to be the X's. That's what I decided that color that I wanted to put in there. And you'll see this thing all come together here as we go to painting the design. And I like to do my outline in my squares first. You might want to see the one that I painted yesterday. It's dry now. I've not put the sealer on it, but there it is. So didn't it come out nice using the pearlescent paints on it? Now this one that I'm doing today, I'm not using pearlescence on it. This is just regular acrylic paint that I got up at the Walmart. Apple Barrel is Walmart's brand of acrylic paint. It's inexpensive paint, but it still paints up real pretty. You could use any kind of acrylic paint that you wanted to use. And once I get my outline on that piece, then I'm going to go back in and fill in the center. It's just that simple. And the main trick here with it is to stay inside the lines to lay in your design and keep to your pattern. X's go in the X's and Z's go in the Z's and Y's go in the Y's. And then we'll put in the stem and the border. But like I was telling you yesterday, these make real cute little gifts. If you don't want to quilt or don't know how to quilt, or don't want to go to the expense of getting all the stuff you need to quilt, and you know how to paint, you probably really enjoy doing these. They look pretty hung on the wall. Nice little bedroom decor pieces. You can either frame them or just put a hanger on the back and hang them on the wall. These are just 5x7 canvas boards that I bought up to Michael's last year. And he's having a big sale. They have them big sales all the time. So I suggest you stock up if you go to Michael's any place closer, or you could even shop online with them. They have a lot of really good deals online too. Like I say, you just pay attention to where your codes are. It's kind of like a paint by number, really. Do you ever play with paint by numbers when you was a kid? Or putting a puzzle together? If you need to move it a little bit to get a little better angle on it, do that. Ain't nothing etched in stone saying that it has to sit exactly the spot you put it down on the desk. And I lay my paint in fairly thick because I don't want to see any pencil lines when I get done. You probably hear my canaries singing today. They're happy. I've got 2 little canaries in there. Keep Fred company. I think they aggravate him more than anything because he can't sing like they do. He likes to try to mimic birds, and he can't mimic what they do. They're a little too fancy singing for him. But they're soothing. I got a couch in there in the office, and I like to take a nap in there once in a while with them singing. They just relax you and just put you to sleep. My granny always had a bird, either a canary or a parakeet. And she'd get so lonesome when she didn't have a bird there, you know, if they passed on to their great reward. And somebody'd end up getting her another bird. Remember one time one of my cousins came to stay with her overnight, and oh, she threw a fit. She wanted to hold the parakeet. And every one of Granny's parakeets was named Snooky. That was the parakeet's name in her house. And my cousin Leanne threw a fit. She wanted to hold Snooky. And Granny told her, she says, I don't think you need to hold Snooky. She says, I don't think you'll know how. You'll squeeze her. And my cousin just threw a fit. Well, Granny got Snooky out and let her hold her. And sure enough, she squeezed the breath out of her. And that was the end of Snooky. Well, my cousin got all upset, homesick, middle of the night, wanting to go home. And had to call her mother to come and get her. And there's Granny, no grandchild, no bird. Till somebody got her another Snooky. The first parakeet that I ever got was a albino white parakeet. Saw him at the pet store, and that was a bird for me right there. It's a male parakeet. I named him Prince Albert, because some of you young ones that listen to my show, you don't remember Prince Albert, but Prince Albert was a brand of tobacco, chewing tobacco. And the mascot for it was a white owl that they called Prince Albert. And a big joke was to prank call people and ask them if they had Prince Albert in a can, because that's what that chewing tobacco come in, was in a can. And if they said that they had Prince Albert in a can, then you'd say, well, then you better let him out. But I had Prince Albert for a good while. And one day I come downstairs and my husband said, I don't think your bird's alive anymore. I said, what are you talking about? And I went over, and Prince Albert was feet up in the bottom of the cage. I was just brokenhearted because I really liked that bird. I mean, if you've ever had a pet, you know how attached you get to them. And I said, well, Lord, I hate to lose that bird. I taught him to talk. Now, my husband couldn't understand a word he said, but I could understand him. Now, he had pretty decent little vocabulary going. Now, he didn't talk real plain, but he was learning. And my husband said, well, what do you reckon killed him? When I guessed, probably old age, because I had no idea how old that bird was when I got him. But I said, well, I guess he had said everything he had to say. Turned up his toes. But I've raised a little bit of everything in my life. Somebody told me, well, you can't raise parakeets. Well, I showed them. Tell a country girl that she can't raise something. We raise everything, including HE double hockey sticks now. And so I got me some birds, and I think I had 2 pair of them going. And I learned what I needed to know in order to raise them. And that's what I did. And then I got some finch. I had a bunch of finch going. I never wanted a cockatiel. Lord have mercy, I did not want a cockatiel. And the way I got started on cockatiels was a friend of mine was going through a divorce, and she's moving to a place where she wasn't allowed to have no pets. And she had a cockatiel. And so she knew that, I took in everybody's critters. And so she called me up and she said she needed a place for her bird because she was having to move. And reluctantly, I said yes. Well, she brought him over, cage and all, and I stepped out on the front porch and she handed me the cage and he looked up at me and he says, "I love you." Oh, my heart melted right there on the spot. I was hooked, much as I didn't want to be. Bless that little bird's heart. Had no place to go, but even a little bird was smart enough to know when somebody had heart enough to take them in. So I gave him a good home for many, many years. Cockatiels will live to be, 30 years old, maybe more. And now Fred, my cockatiel now, I raised him from a little baby. I had his mommy and daddy, and he's the last of the cockatiels that I've got. They either died off or I sold all of them. And Fred, I was trying to remember the other day when he was hatched, and it was in the very early 2000s. I don't remember exactly what year it was, and I did not band him. He's not hand tame. If you stick your hand in the cage, he'll draw blood out of you. But he's a sweet bird just to talk to. He wants company all the time, but I never did try to hand tame him. But I had a parrot. I had one of those African gray parrots. Somebody had him for a breeder. I never could teach that bird nothing. I did teach him to wolf whistle, and I heard him wolf whistle one time, and it was only because he didn't think that I was around to hear him. I was out on the front porch back when I lived on the farm, and he didn't know I was out there. And all of a sudden, I heard him let out a wolf whistle. I looked around the door. That was my first mistake. I shouldn't have let him know I was out there, but I looked around the door, and when he saw me, buddy, he clammed up. I never did hear him do anything after that. I played tapes for that bird. I did everything in the world that I knew to do, but they say that, when they've been used for a breeder, if they haven't been taught how to talk or do anything, that they're probably not going to. I finally got fed up with trying to teach him how to do anything, him not cooperating, and found him a new home. But like I say, I had finch. Doves were my very favorite. I had some beautiful doves, ringnecks. They show doves just like they show a lot of different kinds of animals. And I never showed them, but there was a fella that lived out west someplace in Missouri, I think, west of me. And he had all different colors of doves. So I got a good start of doves off of him. And I had a lot of the different colors that doves come in before I decided to get out of them. And that was my experience with house birds. But I had a lot of poultry too. I had turkeys and geese and ducks and chickens and guineas. Okay, I've got all the X's laid in, and I laid in 4 corners there of brown, and I'm trying to get it fairly dark on there. I do not like seeing canvas show through on my paintings. It's not something that I like, so I try very hard to get as much coverage as I can. If it means I got to put it on a little thicker, well, then that's what I got to do. Okay. Now, let me wipe down my brush here and wipe down my table, and we'll go to a different color. Get another paper towel. And you see the maple leaf starting to come together there with that one color in it. Now I'm going to lay in the Y's. Those go in the center. And I'm going to go with a green. I think I'm going to go with the darker green in the center. And this one, this bottle I have not had open yet. I'll just unscrew the lid and see if I can just pour a little bit out here. And not get too crazy with it. There, that looks good. Now stop pouring. Stop pouring. There we go. Okay. Probably way more than I need, but got to start somewhere, don't we? Okay. The Y's are in the center. There's 3 of them. Trying to rest my hand someplace that there ain't paint to steady my hand. And just take that green right up next to the brown. Now you wouldn't have to just do 1 square at a time, but that's the way I want to do them. I'm not being real careful with my lines there where they join up, because green's green after all. I'm laying a lot of paint in. If it takes a little longer to dry because there's a lot of paint, that's okay. I'm not in any rush. Take however long it takes. But you could use any colors you wanted. I'm just kind of sticking to natural colors since it is a leaf. But your leaf could be purple and pink and chartreuse. Whatever turns you on, what floats your boat. Oops. Oopsie, oopsie. Okay, you know how we fix that. We take a clean one and pull that paint right off of there. Wipe it off on a paper towel. Go over it again. Just pull it off where you don't want it to be. Be a little more careful. We got 3 squares of this color. I'm working on square 2. All right, one more. Let me just these right down there alongside that line. Now, did you see how I did that? This is Y, this is Z. And I come right down to separate Y from Z. We've already got the X's painted in with the brown over here on the other two sides of it and green up here. So I picked the one that I had to pay the most attention to first. Don't procrastinate. Get the worst thing out of the way first. Little erasers on there from where I was erasing some lines. I erased 3 lines here on each side and 3 lines here on each side because I wanted to make those all solid pieces on my border. And I got some little erasers in the way here. Okay, now see some places that could use just a little bit more darkening up. A little piece of eraser there I had to pick out of it. Just very gently move that brush around there to fill in the spots that look like they need a little more. And that's looking pretty good. Okay, so we got the X's and the Y's. And now I'm going to do the Z's. The Z's are going to be this peach color, sun-kissed peach. So I'm thinking that I probably need to do the green on these 4 sides. Or I could just do those with a yellow. But if I do those with yellow, I'm wondering it's probably going to clash with the peach, or I've got some blue up here too that I could put in there. Okay, all right. I'll either do yellow or blue. It's probably going to be blue. So let me wipe down my desk, wipe down my brush, and we'll switch colors. Another piece of paper towel, nice and clean. And put a little paint out here on the mat. Now, every place that I've got Z's is going to take the peach. I'm going to leave the stem open because I've got a lighter color green that I'm going to use for the stem. So let's just go in around that stem first. To mark it off. Like I say, I like to get the hardest part out of the way first. After that, it's all gravy. They say if you eat a live toad first thing in the morning, the rest of your day will be great. You got the worst part out of the way. forgot to put a Z in that one, but it gets a coat of this peach color too. It's part of the background of the leaf. Oops, got over the line a little bit there. Clean that up. Finish filling this in real quick. Run it right over the edge of that pencil line. Fill it in. Okay, now we'll get the clean micro brush and clean that little spot up right there. Oops, drag my paper towel through the paint. I can stop doing that. Okay, now I'm going to get this little piece right here. Okay, we got that side of the stem part done. Now, slide this around so I get a little different angle on it. I'm going to come up here and clean this corner up just a touch. I want it to be pretty crisp. Okay, now I'm going to get a little more paint. And boy, talk about sloppy. What's wrong with me today? Sloppy moppy. Yeah, that's better. So this accomplishes two things. It gets the hardest part there out of the way, right around that stem, doing these curves. And it gives this paint a chance to dry before I come back in to paint the stem. And I got over a little bit there too. Shoot far. Well, why wasn't this messy yesterday? There we go. Clean that up, and I'll be dogged if I didn't stick my finger in the dead burn paint. Let's smooth that out. There we go. Well, this way you get to see the process. You don't have to be the neatest painter in the world to do this, obviously. Huh. Maybe it's the meds that I'm taking to keep my knee from hurting. It's got me flipping around all over the place. I don't know. I may have to hit that with some brown. Let me get just a tad bit brown, touch that up. Yeah. There we go. Well, I thought I had some brown on there. More than one way to skin a cat. Make that line just a little crisper. There, that's looking good. And wipe that brush down real good here. Get all the paint off of it. All right. And why is my computer acting up on me? Stop that. Okay, now come in here and we'll finish these Z's down here. Be sure and get the pencil lines covered up. You don't want to see any of that showing through. If you get it painted and it dries and your pencil lines still show through, give it another coat. You didn't put the paint on thick enough the first time. With these lighter colors, that can happen very easily. Okay, now I say pencil lines and I'm going to touch them up. Now we're going to go all the way around this leaf and all these sections marked Z and paint these in. If you like animals, you would have loved to have been out on the farm with me. See, after my dad had his stroke, he couldn't farm anymore. But he wasn't about to give that farm up. I tried. My husband and I had a real nice house in town, and my dad hated it there. So we sold our house and we bought the farm from Dad so he could continue to live there, and we moved in. And there I was out on the farm again, which was not something I really wanted to do at the time. But looking back on it, it was a blessing. Sometimes the blessings that you get, you don't see as blessings at the time. A lot of times life has to drag you kicking and screaming into a blessing. But I lived there on that farm for 15 years then. My dad passed away about 6 months after we bought the farm. I just shook my head. Lord. People tried to tell me, but I'm thinking, how will you know when it's somebody's time to go? They saying, you buy that farm and then he's going to be gone. You're going to wish he was back in town. And my dad was only 64 years old when he passed away. but he had had a stroke, and then he ended up having a heart attack, died in my arms. And there I was on the farm then. I'm like, well, now what do you do for an encore? So I started farming. I knew how to raise different kinds of livestock. Dad had taught me that growing up. So I started out with rabbits, and I had one of the largest rabbitries in the United States, if not the largest. I had over 1,000 head of rabbits. Everything was purebred, pedigreed. I had a really nice setup. People would come from all over the United States. A lot of them would drive to my house to get rabbits from me. I didn't show rabbits, but I raised some of the best ones in the United States. And since I wasn't in competition with everybody, I didn't have any problem selling people good rabbits. And that's how I started out. Then I branched out from the rabbits and got into poultry and guinea pigs, and people show guinea pigs too. A lot of people don't know that, but yes, they have guinea pig shows right along with the rabbit shows a lot of times, showing guinea pigs. And I won over in Ohio, won the sweepstakes one year in sweepstakes points. And at one of the Ohio State shows, I took grand champion with a little black male guinea pig that I had. Well, shucky darns. Trying to fix a boo-boo and making it worse. Crisp up my line a little bit there. I had boxes of trophies and ribbons from my rabbits and guinea pig, or from the guinea pigs, not the rabbits, but dogs. I showed dogs. I raised English bulldogs for years and traveled all over the place. I think the furthest I went for a dog show was Myrtle Beach, South Carolina. That was in February of 1987. I will never forget that one because I had only been back home from that show a matter of hours when I got the call that Dad was on his way to the hospital. He'd had a stroke. You know, it's funny how you remember where you were when different things happen in your life. I mean, everybody that was alive at the time remembers where they were when Kennedy was assassinated. I was in the first grade in the classroom when the word came in, and I remember how the teachers all went to crying, and everybody had drug televisions into the classrooms. Because at first, you know, it was just that Kennedy was shot. And then it quickly became that he had been assassinated. And we all remember where we were when 9/11 hit, if he was alive when 9/11 happened. I was making soap in the kitchen, and a farmhand that I had was out working in the barn, and he come running in the house, and he says, "Turn the television on quick." I was like, what in the world? So I run in and turn the TV on, and of course, any channel on the TV was talking about it. It was just shock, absolute shock. And I will never forget the pictures of those towers and the pictures of the people running for their lives through the streets. And everybody wondering who was responsible at the time. And I'll never forget when I got the word that my granny had passed away. I was at work. I was working in an office for a um, hardware company when my stepmother called and told me that my granny had passed away. I thought somebody had just shoved a knife in me. One of the gals that worked there, I mean, I was sobbing. And it's funny how people react, but she come up to me and she says, it was your grandma. She says, well, how old was she? And I said, she was 89 years old. And she looked at me and said, well, she had a full life, didn't she? I mean, when you are in the throes of grief, somebody saying something like that to you in that format um, doesn't bring you a whole lot of solace, I didn't work there very long after that. It was a dead end job anyway. It was within a month or two of that happening that a job in the um, executive offices for a secretary came available, and I applied for it, and they passed me over and hired somebody from the outside. That was the straw that broke the camel's back right there. I could have even accepted if they had moved somebody else from inside the company up into that position. But when they passed me over to hire somebody from the outside, I thought, I'm never going to get anywhere here. That was one of the smartest moves I ever made. I'm not made a whole lot of really smart moves in my life, but that one was pretty good. I was just talking to somebody this morning about being able to judge people's character. I've become pretty good at it, I think. I get sideswiped once in a while, but I think I've become pretty good over the years at being able to judge people right off the bat. And I'm not saying when I say judge, people's going to have fit and say, "Oh, she's judging people." I'm talking about their character. If a person means you ill or if a person has a good heart. There's a lot of people that are ill-intended that will take advantage of you in a heartbeat, but they will smile at you and tell you exactly what they think you want to hear while they're burying a knife in your back. Boy, I've met a few of them. I've learned to listen to my intuition. An example would be a few years ago, I met somebody just to be friends with. I mean, I have absolutely no intentions of having any romantic involvements with anybody. Lord, I'm over that. But there was a younger feller that is a farmer that came to the farmer's market where I was going, and I was trying to talk to him about farming and animals and swap mates and that sort of thing because, well, know a little bit about it. And next thing I know, he's casing my place to see if he can't rob me. I'm like, holy moly. I quickly found out that that was not going to be possible. Got a security system in here, and I know how to protect myself. So that would be very ill-advised. But there's a lot of folks that they think they can get away from it. With it, they'll take everything you got. Gotta be careful. Okay, now I've got the stem to do, and I know that I'm going to do the stem in this lighter color green because I want it to stand out from this green that I got in the center. And I know that I've got these 4 sections around the edges to do, and I could do them in the yellow, but I think that's too bright for this. So I'm thinking I will do this with the blue. This is an Admiral blue, it's called. So I think those will go with the blue real well. And before I do that, let me clean this paint up off the desk. Wipe that down so I don't get my paints mixed. Get me another piece of paper towel. I'm going to do just a little bit of green there for that stem. And get that out of the way. For this one, I'm going to take the lid off the bottle for no more green than I'm going to need there. I don't see any reason to put it all out on the desk. Get a little on the brush. I'm just going to ease that right down the stem. Now, if you was doing this in a quilt, the stems on these maple leaves would be appliqued on. I don't ever remember my granny doing any appliquing on her quilts. I think she did a little bit of appliquing on some pillow tops, but it wasn't very much. Most of her craft was either knitting. She knitted house slippers. She made her own pattern, and she knit house slippers for folks, and her quilting. She had done some embroidery, I guess, in her younger days because she had a lot of really pretty dresser scarves and pillow shams and pillowcases that she had done some beautiful embroidery on. There, perfect little stem. And we'll put the lid back on that shade of green. And then we'll come in with this blue and do the rest of the border with the blue. Take one block of it at a time. But I like doing things here with quilt patterns. You've seen me in some previous videos doing the wood veneer on the wood boards in a couple different quilt patterns. And I've got 4 more of these canvas boards that I'll be doing various quilt patterns on, since everybody seems to enjoy that so good. And I've got some other ideas for doing some quilt patterns too, that maybe sometime this summer I'll get to. But just as I was going through unfinished projects and supplies and things, I saw these canvas boards and this idea struck me. And I thought, yeah, we can put those canvas boards to good use. My granny used to tell me stories about when she was a girl. She had a big family she was from. I don't even remember now how many kids was in her family. I'd have to go back. I've got it all written down someplace because I was intelligent enough as a child to know that she wouldn't be around forever. And if I wanted to know much about my heritage, she'd be a good person to ask about the family tree. And she was too. She gave me a lot of information about her side of the family, Grandpa's side of the family. And she had a sister that was about the same age as her, not too much difference, Cindy. I met Cindy once. I mean, see, back in them days, people lived far off from each other, you know, and we didn't have the kind of transportation that we have today. Cars weren't. Well, I made that line pretty crooked. I'll have to go back and fix that. So folks didn't get around to see each other like we do today. I mean, I don't think nothing of getting in the vehicle and driving 2 or 3 hours for something, you know. Much further than that, then I would have to give it a little more thought because I drove so much with my last job. It was nothing for me to drive 500 or 600 miles in a day. But, you know, now driving 300 or 400 miles one way to do something, not a big deal. I'll do it if I need to. But back then, just to go even 50 miles to do something was an all-day trip, pack a lunch, and, have the mail canceled. Uh, yeah, she used to tell me stories about how her and her sister Cindy would go to the fair and run around with their friends when they were young. Play games. My granny taught me how to play a card game that you've probably heard of. It's called Old Maid. And we didn't have a deck of Old Maid cards. She took an old cereal box and cut it up. Well, several old cereal boxes, whatever she happened to have there on hand, and cut them up and put the numbers and the stuff on the cards and made one into the Old Maid and taught me how to play Old Maid. I had just turned 6 years old when my grandpa passed away. And I was Grandpa's girl. And school had just started. It was like second day of school. And Granny called early up at the house one morning and said, "Gotta get down here right away. Something's wrong with Pa." So we all ran down there, and ambulance came, put him on a gurney, and brought him out of the house. And I'm standing there on the sidewalk in front of the house, and he looked over at me and he says, "Now you be a good little girl and go on to school, and Grandpa will be home in a few days." He died that afternoon. And that was the day my entire life changed. Granny decided to go live with some of her other relatives far off for a year. And I had lost both of my best friends when she took off and Grandpa had passed on. And that was devastating for a 6-year-old, I'll tell you what. But it is what it is, I was going to school and there was a bully on the school bus. She bullied the far out of me. And to this day, if I ever run into her, I'll flatten her nose for her. And I put the word out to her several years ago. It's probably been 30 years ago now. I met somebody that knew her when they heard what school I went to. I said, "Oh, do you know so-and-so?" I said, "Oh, do I know her?" And I told them the story of her. And it's, "Well, I work with her." And I said, "Well, will you just give her a message for me? You tell her she better hope that she never comes face to face with me again, because I'm not that little 6-year-old that she bullied anymore." She made my life on that school bus a living hell for 2 years. I was afraid to tell anybody. I mean, the bus driver knew about it. He wasn't going to do nothing about it. But I was afraid to tell anybody about it because I thought it would just make things worse. I mean, hindsight being 2020, I should have been screaming from the rooftops about it. But being a little kid, you don't know that. And that's why I think it's very important for people to tell their children, look, if somebody's bullying you, somebody's giving you a hard time, about anything, about the way you look, about where you live, about who you are, about how you act, anything. You need to stand up to them. Let somebody of some authority know about it. Let your friends know about it. Now, I'm not saying get on YouTube and make a drama video about it. Some things should be handled privately. But I am saying you do not allow people to bully you. You do not allow people to intimidate you. You stand up, you get a backbone. But a lot of my issue was I was an only child until I was 7. And there was no other kids around. And I hadn't really been socialized. You know, people talk about getting a pet and socializing it. Well, it's the same way with kids. You know, they need to be socialized a little bit. Don't just wait for them to go to school and expect that by the time they're 5, 6 years old, that they're just going to fit in with everybody. My best friends up until I started school was imaginary. I know a lot of people laugh about that. Oh, yeah, what's wrong with you, imaginary friends? Well, shoot, and that's all you got. It's your imagination. Probably one of the things that's made me so creative is my imagination. When you don't have playmates, you know, you come up with your own ways to entertain yourself. There's a lot to be said for it, and the fact that you get to appreciate nature. You know, things that you might not have paid a lot of attention to had you been distracted by a bunch of other kids. But by the same token, once in a while, kids need somebody to play with, not somebody that's going to bully them and be mean to them. Yeah, I even ran into that girl's brother on the internet on Facebook, and they said that he wasn't close with his sister. And I said, well, she's the same way she was in school. I can understand why. And he clammed up because he knows how she treated me. You know, you'll forget something that somebody says to you. To this day, I don't remember much she said to me. I remember a few things, but you never, ever forget the way somebody makes you feel. That sticks with you forever. Now we're on the last portion of this border. I'm just going to ease my line right down through here. Let's see if I can ease it down this one without having to go back and clean anything up. This is going together rather nicely, don't you think? See how I just drag that paint right on down. And I believe I got the paint on the design thick enough that there's not going to be pencil lines showing through it. Okay, now for an encore, I am going to take a paintbrush. Trying to find the one I want here. This one, I think, well, I don't know. It's kind of fluffy looking. I think that'll do, though. I'll take a paintbrush and I'm just going to kind of stroke the paint a little bit here on this blue part. To brush it out just a little bit. Even it up. Try to do it without leaving a bunch of brush strokes in it. Okay. And there it is. Turn it around this way, because I think that's the way that I would like for it to hang on the wall. Get a little more blue paint here on the edge. Well, hold still. There we go. There we go. And I'm pretty happy with that. I think it's looking pretty nice. Rinse my brush out and my brush water over here. And got 4 more of these to do for you the next few days here. So we'll get those knocked out. So I hope you enjoyed this. Please check out my Etsy store, my Patreon, and my Twitch and Twitter and Instagram. I'll be doing a live Twitch show at 3 o'clock this afternoon, Eastern Time. And I haven't decided what I'm going to be doing on that show yet. Who knows? Maybe even doing another one of these for all I know. We'll see how my knee's feeling and what I feel like digging out to do. So with all that being said, there's only one thing left to say, and that's Brenda's crafty. Be like Brenda.